Previously in Part 1, Park Ywin walked into Serena Cole's wedding in Seoul and saw his daughter for the first time. Serena's fiancé Daniel Foster, a good man, walked away with quiet dignity after asking one honest question. In a hotel courtyard, 5-year-old Nadia moved over on a bench and made room for a stranger she recognized from a hidden photograph. Yihwan explained his 5-year absence, a criminal board faction that had surveilled Serena and threatened her safety. Serena's mother Margaret gave her verdict from Atlanta, measured, clear, and non-negotiable. The story ended not with a reunion but with a threshold, both hands open, nothing yet certain. Let's go. Hey family. Welcome to Afro-Korean Stories. Before we dive into this evocative narrative, drop a comment below, and tell me where you're watching from, and tell me what time this video got to you. Your supports keep this stories alive, and don't forget to like, share, and hit the subscribe button. 'Cause what happens next absolutely will blow your mind. The dumplings, Nadia had concluded after 3 consecutive Saturdays, were not a food. They were a system. You have to respect the fold, she told her father, with the grave authority of someone who had been paying close attention. If you rush the fold, the filling escapes. And then you have failed the dumpling. Park Yihwan, who ran a $200 million infrastructure group with the calm precision of a man born to manage complexity, was being corrected on dumpling technique by a 5-year-old and was accepting it without resistance. You're right, he said. Show me again. Nadia demonstrated. Serena stood at the kitchen counter with her coffee, watching the two of them bent over the flowered board in her Seoul apartment, and felt something she didn't have a word for yet. Not quite peace. Not quite happiness. Something more careful than both, a feeling with its guard still partially up, the way a room feels when the window has been opened for the first time after a long winter. 6 weeks of Saturdays. 6 weeks of flour on the counter and Nadia's running commentary and Yewin arriving at 5:30 exactly every time, with the quiet consistency of a man who understands that showing up is its own form of language. He had not pushed. He had not asked for more than was offered. He came on Saturdays, stayed for 3 hours, and left when Serena's energy shifted, which she had not expected him to notice and which he noticed every time. You're counting, Rachel had said to her on the phone the previous week. I'm not counting. You said 6 weeks before I asked how long it had been. That's counting. Serena had ended the call and immediately thought of something urgent to do on the other side of the apartment. Now, watching Nadia position Yewin's hands on the wrapper with the patience of a small, flour-dusted instructor, Serena felt the guard lower itself another fraction. Not all the way, but another fraction. Mom, Nadia said without looking up. You're staring again. I'm supervising. You're staring. Nadia glanced at Yewin. She does this when she's thinking about something she hasn't decided yet. Yewin kept his eyes on the dumpling. But the corner of his mouth moved. Serena put her coffee down and came to the board. Move over, she said. I'll show you both how it's really done. The dumpling she produced split immediately along the seam. Nadia said nothing. She simply passed her mother a new wrapper with the measured diplomacy of someone choosing their battles. The infrastructure consulting work had become, over 6 weeks, something Serena had not anticipated, indispensable. Not to Yewin, or not only to Yewin, but to her. The Yewin Group's Incheon port expansion involved 18 overlapping contracts across 4 jurisdictions, and every one of them had language that rewarded scrutiny. Serena's instinct for buried risk had found 3 clauses in the first month that the group's senior legal team had walked past entirely. You should be doing this full-time, Yewin said one evening, the two of them alone in the Yeouido office after 7, documents spread between them on the conference table. The ceramic fox presided from its corner. Not as a consultant, a permanent position. Head of contract risk. Serena looked up. That's a significant offer to make across a conference table at 7 in the evening. It's where we are most of our evenings. That's not an argument in your favor. He leaned back in his chair and studied her with the particular attention he gave to things that required his full engagement. What would make it an argument in my favor? Not mixing the professional and the... She stopped. Chose a different path. Not mixing the work with everything else. Everything else, he repeated carefully. The room held the question. Serena looked at the documents in front of her, then back at him, and decided to be honest. which she had been practicing with him as a deliberate and sometimes uncomfortable discipline. "I don't know what we are yet," she said. "Outside of Saturdays and this office. I don't know what to call it. And I think taking a permanent position before I know the answer to that would be imprecise." "Imprecise," he said, and there was something warm in the word, the way he said it. "You mean it would make things harder to exit if they went wrong?" "I mean exactly that." "That's fair." He nodded once, no argument. "The offer stands whenever you're ready. The timeline is yours." Serena looked at him for a moment. This, the not pushing, the not leveraging, was the part she had not fully prepared for. She had prepared for the version of Yihwan who decided things and expected the world to accommodate. She had not entirely prepared for this version, who had apparently learned, somewhere in 5 years of consequence, how to wait. It was, she was finding, considerably harder to maintain a careful distance from. Nadia Cole had always been a child who processed things quietly and released them on her own schedule. Her teacher at the Seoul primary school, Ms. O, had described her in 2 consecutive parent-teacher meetings as a child who listens more than she speaks and understands more than she shows. Serena had accepted this as accurate and slightly unnerving. It was a Tuesday evening, bath done, book finished, the Han River dark beyond the apartment window, when Nadia said, from within the specific gravity of almost sleep, "Is Ywin Appa going to live with us?" The word stopped Serena mid-tuck. The Korean word for father. Casual. Settled. As though it had been in rotation for some time. "Where did you?" Serena studied herself. "Where did that word come from?" "Jisoo uses it for her dad." I asked her what it meant. Nadia's eyes were mostly closed. "It seemed right. You could have asked me first. I knew you'd make a face." Serena sat on the edge of the bed and looked at her daughter, this composed, watchful, flower-covered on Saturday's child who had moved over on a bench 6 weeks ago and made a decision that all the adults in the room were still catching up to. "He's not living with us," Serena said carefully. "Not right now. But maybe later?" "That's a conversation for grown-ups." "That means you haven't decided." Nadia opened one eye. When grown-ups say, "That's a grown-up conversation," they mean, "I don't know yet, but I don't want to say I don't know." Serena stared at her child. "Where did you get that?" "Rachel Ani." The eye closed again. "She said it to Uncle Vin about his girlfriend." "Rachel is going to hear from me." "Mum." Nadia's voice was quieter now, the register of someone nearly asleep but choosing to say one more true thing. "I like when he comes. The apartment feels different when he's here. Not bigger. Just less empty in the corners." Serena sat with that for a long time after Nadia's breathing deepened. Less empty in the corners. 5 years old. She went to the kitchen and stood at the window and looked at the city and allowed herself, for the first time in 5 years, to want something she hadn't given herself permission to want. It arrived on a Wednesday. A standard manila envelope, addressed to Serena at the Ywin group office, which was odd in itself because she had used the office address for exactly one document, an internal consultant registration form she'd signed 6 weeks ago. She almost set it aside for later. She almost did. Inside was a single folded sheet, no letterhead, no return address, and a photograph printed on plain paper. A photograph of Ywin. He was seated at a restaurant table, clearly in Seoul, clearly recent. The cut of his suit matched one she had seen him wear in the past 2 weeks. Across from him sat a woman. Elegant. Korean. Perhaps 40. Leaning forward with the particular posture of someone making a case for something. Below the photograph, printed in clean block letters. Ask him about Song Jion. Ask him what he promised her before he came back to you. Serena read it twice. Set it on the desk. Read it a 3rd time. Then she turned it face down and finished the clause analysis she had been working on because she had learned in 32 years of life that the worst possible time to have an important conversation was while your hands were shaking. She waited until 6 o'clock. Until the last assistant had left the office floor. Until it was only the 2 of them, the documents, the ceramic fox, and the Han River going gray outside the window. She placed the photograph on the table in front of him. Ywin looked at it. The change in his expression was small, a tightening around the jaw, a stillness that was different from his usual stillness. More effortful. Serena sat down, folded her hands, and used the voice she had used on every difficult contract she had ever reviewed. precise, without temperature, impossible to deflect. Who is Song Ji-yeon? He didn't reach for the photograph. He didn't explain it away. He sat back in his chair and was quiet for a long moment, not the quiet of someone formulating a lie, but the heavier quiet of someone deciding how much truth the moment could hold. She is the daughter of Chairman Song Byung-chul, he said. One of the 3 men who controlled the board faction I dismantled 4 years ago. Song Byung-chul died in custody 8 months ago. Ji-yeon approached me 6 months after his death. She approached you. She said she had documentation, financial records from her father's estate that could reopen proceedings against the 2 surviving board members and close the final legal gaps in the case. She said she wanted to cooperate. She said the price was a conversation. A conversation. Serena kept her voice even. That's what's in the photograph. A conversation. 3 meetings over 2 months. All in Seoul. All about the case. And you didn't mention any of it. Pause that followed was itself the admission. No, he said. Serena stood. She moved to the window, not because she wanted to look at the river, but because she needed to not be sitting across from him while she organized her thoughts. Below, Seoul continued, indifferent, enormous, unhelpful. 3 meetings, she said. Over 2 months. While you were coming to my apartment on Saturdays and eating at my table and letting my daughter call you Appa. She turned. Why didn't you tell me? Because the case involves people who, when they feel cornered, act without proportion. His voice was controlled, but she could hear the fault line in it. Ji-yeon came to me with information that could end this permanently. I wanted to resolve it before it was anywhere near you or Nadia. You decided for me, Serena said. Very quiet. Again. The words landed. She watched them land. I know, he said. You told me in that hotel vestibule 7 weeks ago that you had spent 5 years knowing you made the wrong choice. You said you understood the difference between protecting someone and deciding for them. She looked at him directly. Did you mean it? Yes. Then explain to me how you justified this. He met her eyes, and for the first time in 7 weeks, she saw him without the careful composure, just the thing underneath, which was not cruelty and not indifference but something more painful than both. A man who had learned to carry danger alone for so long that he had not yet fully learned to put it down. I told myself it was temporary, he said. I told myself it would be over before it mattered. I was wrong. And I know that saying I was wrong again is not sufficient. Rachel arrived at Serena's apartment at 8:15 that night with 2 bottles of sake, the sweet rice drink she knew Serena kept for the evenings that required something that wasn't wine, and the expression of a woman who had received a phone call and cleared her calendar. She sat across from Serena at the kitchen table, listened to the full account without interruption, and then was quiet for a considered moment. Okay, she said. Okay. Serena looked at her. That's your response? I'm processing. Rachel turned her bottle in her hands. He kept a significant thing from you. That's real. It's the same pattern that cost you 5 years. That's also real. She paused. The difference is, this time when you asked directly, he told you the truth within 60 seconds. He didn't explain it away. He didn't make it your problem for finding out. He said, I know, and he looked like a man who meant it. You're defending him. I'm giving you the full picture. There's a difference. Rachel set her bottle down. Serena. What do you want? Not what you're afraid of, not what makes sense on paper. What do you actually want? The question sat between them in the kitchen's quiet. I want to stop waiting for the next thing he hasn't told me, Serena said. That's fair. And reasonable. And the thing you need to tell him, not me. I know. I want to add one thing. Rachel's voice was measured. That envelope arrived at the office. Someone sent it. Someone who knew your address, knew about Ji-yeon, and chose to put that information in your hands instead of letting Ywin tell you himself. She met Serena's eyes. That's not a friend doing you a favor. That's someone trying to pull something apart. I want you to hold both things at once, Ywin's mistake and the fact that someone engineered this moment. Serena was quiet. I'm not excusing him, Rachel continued. I'm saying the conversation you need to have with him has 2 parts. His part. And whoever sent that envelope. You think it was Ji-yeon. I think it was someone who knows enough to want this over before it gets to wherever it's going. Rachel picked up her Siki again, which means whatever Ywin has been navigating is not as finished as he thought. She called him at 9 the next morning and asked him to come to the apartment. Not the office. The apartment, which was her ground, her terms, her rules. He arrived in 12 minutes, which told her he had been close. Nadia was at school. The apartment was quiet in the particular way of a space that is usually full of a child and is not. Serena made tea, not to be hospitable but because her hands needed something to do, and they sat at the kitchen table where on Saturdays there was flour and the small chaos of dumplings in progress. Rachel thinks someone sent that envelope to destabilize something, Serena said. Not to inform me. To detonate. Yes. He wrapped his hands around the tea she'd placed in front of him. I know who sent it. She waited. The 2 surviving board members have a lawyer. The lawyer has been monitoring the Yeouido situation. If Yeouido's documentation reaches the prosecutors, those 2 men face another 10 years. The envelope was sent to create exactly what it created, a rupture between us so that I lose focus and the case loses momentum. He paused. I identified the source this morning. My legal team is managing it. And Yeouido herself? She called me an hour ago. She did not send the envelope. She is as exposed by this as we are. He looked at Serena directly. She is cooperating with prosecutors. The documentation is already submitted. The case closes within 90 days. Serena absorbed this. You should have told me about her from the beginning. Yes. Not because I need to approve your legal strategy. Because we said I thought we agreed that unilateral decisions were what broke the first version of this. She kept her voice level but put the full weight of it into every word. I cannot build something with you if you keep parts of your life behind glass. I cannot do it, Yihwan. I have a daughter who has already decided to love you. I need to know that the man she is loving is the same one I'm being shown. He was very still. You are the same one, he said. The Yeouido meetings were a mistake in judgment, not a concealment of character. But I understand that from where you're standing, that distinction may not hold much weight right now. It holds some weight, she said honestly. Not all the weight. Some. Tell me what you need. I need you to promise me, and I need to believe it's a promise you have the actual capacity to keep, that if something touches this family, you tell me. Not when it's resolved. Not when you've decided it's safe. When it begins. He held her gaze with the steadiness of someone making a commitment rather than a concession. I promise, he said. And you have the right to hold me to it. It was, of all things, a science project that broke the tension. Nadia had been assigned the task of presenting something that grows and changes over time to her class the following Friday. She had been considering this for a week with the focused deliberation she brought to all significant decisions. She had rejected plants, too slow and everyone will do plants, and rejected photographs, too easy, and had arrived with characteristic precision at a different answer entirely. She presented her conclusion at the kitchen table that Saturday morning with Ywin present, because she had specifically asked that he be present, and Serena had not had the architecture to refuse. I'm going to present us, Nadia said. Serena set down her coffee. Us. Our family. How it changed. Nadia had a notebook open, which she had apparently been preparing. I'm going to explain that some families grow slowly and some grow suddenly and both are normal. I'm going to say that my family grew suddenly 6 weeks ago when a person came back. She looked at Ywin. I'm going to say his name. Is that all right? Ywin looked at her for a long moment. Then, that is entirely all right. I'm also going to explain that trust is like a growing thing because it starts small and needs regular attention and can be damaged by poor conditions but can recover if treated properly. She looked at Serena. That's not just the project. That's also what I think about you and him. Serena stared at her daughter. Ms. O says I integrate my personal observations into my academic work, Nadia said with faint pride. She said it as a caution, but I took it as a compliment. Ywin made a sound that was, definitively and without question, a laugh. Short, genuine, unguarded, the laugh of someone caught entirely off guard by joy. Serena had not heard it before. It did something irreversible to the careful architecture she had been maintaining around her heart. 5 years old, she said to no one in particular. Almost 6, Nadia corrected. My birthday is in 6 weeks. I would like Korean barbecue and a book about rivers and for both of you to be there. She said the last clause with the brisk, matter-of-fact tone of someone issuing a schedule and returned to her notebook. It was 11 at night in Seoul, which made it 9 in the morning in Atlanta, which meant Margaret Cole was on her second coffee and fully operational. Talk, her mother said before Serena had finished the greeting. Serena talked. All of it, Yeouido, the envelope, the conversation at the kitchen table, the promise, Nadia's science project, the laugh she had not been prepared for. She talked for 22 minutes, and her mother listened with the focused attention of a woman taking notes. Then Margaret was quiet for a moment. The envelope, she said. Someone sent that to hurt you. Yes. And instead of it hurting you, it caused a conversation that clarified exactly where the boundary is and whether he can hold it. That's one way to look at it. That's the accurate way to look at it. A pause. Serena. I want to say something and I want you to hear it as your mother, not as a caution. Go ahead. I have watched you protect yourself for 5 years. I watched you choose Daniel, who was good and safe and would never have made you feel the particular terror of being fully known by someone. I understood why. I didn't argue. Her voice was even. But I have also watched you in these past 6 weeks on our calls, and there is something in you that I have not heard since before he left. Something that is not caution and not management. Something that sounds like you. A beat. I'm not telling you to trust him because he deserves it. I'm telling you to consider trusting him because you deserve to stop living in a fortress. Serena sat on the apartment balcony in the Seoul night air, the city below her, the phone warm against her ear. He made the same mistake twice, she said. He did. And he admitted it within 60 seconds and did not make you responsible for it. Her mother's voice was careful but certain. That is not the same man who vanished without a word. That is a man who is learning. Learning is not the same as learned. But it is not nothing. When did you become his advocate? I became Nadia's advocate. The rest follows. A brief pause and then, characteristically, also, Rachel told me about the laugh. Rachel, Serena said with deep feeling, tells you everything. She does, Margaret agreed without apology. Go to sleep, Serena. And in the morning decide what you actually want. Not what's sensible. What you want. She texted him on a Sunday morning. Not a Saturday, a Sunday which had no established routine, no precedent, no protective structure of dumplings and flour and Nadia's supervision. Just, come for breakfast. No agenda *. He arrived at 8. He brought the good coffee from the Mapo roaster she had mentioned once 6 weeks ago in passing. She had not expected him to remember. Nadia was still asleep, a rare luxury for a Sunday earned by a week of early mornings. The apartment was quiet in a way that felt different from the controlled quiet Serena had been maintaining. Softer. Less managed. They made breakfast without discussion, eggs, toast, the last of the kimchi that Serena had bought from the Siademan market and only half finished. Kitchen had a rhythm to it, the two of them moving in a space they had been sharing for 6 weeks without ever quite acknowledging how naturally they had learned each other's orbit. They ate at the table by the window, the Sunday city unhurried below them. I've been thinking about what you said, Serena said. In the office. About the position. Ywin waited, his coffee cup in both hands. I don't want to be head of contract risk, she said. I want to keep consulting on my terms with a formal agreement that clearly separates the professional from everything else. She held his gaze. I want those to be distinct. I need them to be distinct. Not because I don't trust you. Because I trust myself more when the structures are clear. Done, he said without hesitation. Whatever structure works for you. I'm also going to need you to stop deciding what I can and cannot handle. She said it calmly, without accusation. When something starts, anything, you tell me. Not the resolved version. The live version. We decide together what to do with it. I understand. I know you understand. I need you to do it. Yes. No conditions. No qualifications. Serena looked at him across the Sunday breakfast table, in her apartment with the morning light on the river view and her daughter asleep down the hall and the ceramic fox on the shelf where Nadia had placed it last week with the declaration that it belonged in the home, not the office. Nadia said the apartment feels less empty in the corners when you're here, she said. Ywin said nothing. But something in his face opened, not dramatically, not in the way of scenes that announce themselves. Quietly. The way a window that has been shut for a long time opens on the first warm morning, and the air changes, and the room remembers what it was built for. I want to try, Serena said. Not the cautious version. Not the managed version. The real thing, with all its difficulty and its risk and the absolute certainty that it will require more of both of us than anything either of us has done before. She paused. I want to try. Ywin set down his coffee. He reached across the table, not to take her hand but to rest his beside it. An offering, not a claim. So do I, he said. And I will spend whatever time it takes proving that this version of me is worth that. Down the hallway, the sound of small, deliberate footsteps. A door opening. Nadia appeared in the kitchen doorway in her pajamas, hair in spectacular disarray, surveying the scene at the table with the satisfaction of someone whose science project thesis had just been confirmed. You're both here, she said. On a Sunday. We're both here, Serena said. Nadia nodded, climbed into her chair, reached for the toast. Good, she said, with the absolute finality of a 5-year-old who has managed this outcome with considerable patience and expects it to continue. Sighed, Seoul moved in its bright, relentless way. The Han River caught the morning light. The city did not pause or mark the moment, it never does, but the three of them sat at the table in the corner apartment in Seoul, and the room was, in every corner, full. This is what love looks like when it does the real work. Not the grand gesture, but the Sunday morning, the honest conversation, the hand placed beside rather than over. This story found something in you, subscribe. There are more stories worth witnessing. And you deserve to see them all.